We can start with just what you think the biggest issues that Californians are facing right now.
I think they're economic issues. People are still struggling with high prices. In many parts of the state, they're struggling to pay their bills, make sure that their kids are safe. Very bread and butter challenges of everyday life. Costs of childcare remain impossibly high for too many families. And there's a lot we can do about it. So this is a central part of my campaign, meeting the everyday economic needs of Californians. We need to restore the child tax credit to what we had during the pandemic. We need to give more support to people starting small businesses and helping them keep small businesses going. There's so much that we can do to restore the California dream for many families that are worried it's slipping away.
I read some polls from the Public Policy Institute of California, and economic issues were right there at the top, was actually number one, and right there at the top was homelessness, climate change, and crime. What do you think Congress can do to address some of those big issues as well?
I think homelessness is one of the biggest issues in the state, and it's an indication that over the last couple decades, the economy has changed in ways that people who are doing well are doing super well. But people who are struggling are really struggling. Their incomes haven't kept pace with the cost of housing, and the result is we have more and more people living on the street. And unless we address some of those fundamental imbalances, we're always going to have more people becoming homeless even as we find homes for people who already are. There's a lot the federal government can do to be a better partner, to provide more resources, to identify, okay, these are programs that work to help people get off the street, to help build more affordable housing. We ought to invest in these things that work. On the other hand, these approaches have not worked. They're unsustainable, they're unaffordable. Californians, I think, are very both generous as well as compassionate. They want to help people who don't have a home. At the same time, they want to know that their tax dollars are being used wisely on solutions that are actually working. And it's important that, I think at the federal level, we help identify this approach works, we invest in it. That doesn't work, we can't be spending money on things that don't work.
California has, increased the minimum wage recently, and there's going to be a ballot in 2024 to increase it even more, let voters weigh in on it. I know it's something that Biden has called for. Do you believe in increasing the minimum wage on the federal level?
Absolutely. The reality is that in real dollar terms, what people are earning in a minimum wage is a fraction of what they earned in the past. And this is precisely the problem, that if we don't make sure that people who are working full-time can have a roof over their head and put food on the table, then the economy isn't working. And it's not, my Republican colleagues like to say this is all the impersonal effect of the economy and people's merit. The reality is we decide in a lot of the policy decisions, like the child tax credit, which families are going to benefit from the tax code. And we've made the decision, I think it's a terrible decision, to advantage people who are already doing really well. Instead of placing the focus on helping people in the middle class stay in the middle class and helping people become part of the middle class. So we need to make different choices with our tax code. We need to make different choices with the way we incentivize, for example, the green economy and creating new jobs in the green economy. There's a lot that the federal government can do to help business succeed and be a better partner with state and local government. And these are all things that we can do to lift people up during these challenging times.
I've heard you say several times throughout this campaign of yours that you are running to protect democracy. What is it that you believe you can do to protect democracy in the Senate that you can't do from the House?
Well, I authored the package of our own post-Watergate-like reforms to strengthen our democratic institutions, to attack the abuses of power we saw during the Trump administration. That package passed the House, but we can't get it through the Senate. We need someone to champion that and push that through the Senate. That's one of the things that I want to devote my time and attention to. I also want to champion voting rights. We've gotten that passed in the House. We haven't gotten that passed in the Senate. We're going to need to do away with the filibuster. I think we need more powerful advocates in the Senate to do away with this arcane rule that has been used to disenfranchise people in the past and is being used that way again. These are some of the things that I want to continue to champion. I've been carrying a bill to more than double, for example, the size of the Santa Monica Mountains Recreation Area. It's gotten passed in the House. We haven't gotten it passed in the Senate. So there's a great amount that I think I can accomplish in the Senate that so far we've been able to do in the House, but not in the other chamber.
But you would, if elected, be replacing a Democrat, not a Republican. So unless the balance changes, it would stay the same. So is the work you're talking about going to be working and talking to other members of the Senate?
Yes, I'm certainly going to be making the case to other senators, and there are some Democratic senators who don't support doing away with the filibuster. We need to make sure that our representatives in the Senate are committed to doing that. I've also been traveling around the country for the last half a decade trying to help elect other Democrats so that we can make progress on these issues. And that's, I think an element of leadership also is not just focusing on yourself, but focusing on bringing like-minded people to the House, to the Senate, so that we can get the work of the American people done.
America went to sleep last night and woke up to the news of another mass shooting. What do you think needs to happen to stop those from continuing to happen?
Yeah, this is so infuriating to me that we continue to go through these terrible traumas and tragedies. I don't understand how so many of my colleagues refuse to act on this, why they can't put themselves in the shoes of the families of these victims. It will require, I think, that we continue to not only fight for common sense solutions like an assault weapon ban, like a ban on extended ammunition clips, like truly universal background checks, but also the passage of a bill that I've been carrying for most of the decade, which is one that President Biden said may be the single most important gun safety reform, and that is a bill I have to eliminate the immunity from liability that the gun industry has. They're the only industry in America that can act negligently, that can do things like market assault weapons to young people, that enjoys immunity, and they shouldn't. And so I'm going to fight to make sure that becomes law, that we repeal that immunity, that we make progress on these pivotal issues so that no other parent has to grieve a child that was killed in one of these shootings, or a parent that was lost, or a brother or sister or a neighbor. This just has got to stop.
Do you think that California is taking the right approach? Recently, the governor and the attorney general announced that they are sponsoring legislation to enforce and strengthen the state's concealed carry weapons, the permits. A lot of critics say that that's only going to punish the law-abiding citizens, that the criminals don't even go through that legal route. What are your thoughts on how California is addressing gun violence?
I'm very proud that California has played a leading role in passing common sense gun safety legislation. The problem has been that people can bring guns from across state lines. If we have very good laws and our neighboring states or others don't, then we're going to continue to see the tragedy of mass shootings in California. Monterey Park, I used to represent, just went through a terrible tragedy. So many other California cities have just within the last month. We can do a lot better than that, and I applaud what California has done. I think we need to do it nationwide, though, to truly have an impact.
And how does that happen? By talking to colleagues?
Certainly by lobbying other members of the Congress, by making the case, by speaking out, by mobilizing voters. I've been traveling around the country helping elect people who are, like myself, going to champion gun safety legislation in these purplish districts. Because you often have a choice among candidates, and so I've been out supporting those that will actually be champions and not just passive supporters of gun safety legislation. That's what it's going to take.
What sets you apart from some of the other names that have officially been introduced, like Katie Porter, and some that people are expecting to put their hat in the ring, in Barbara Lee, for example? What sets you apart?
I think we are all progressives. The question is who can get things done, who can actually make progress. I have a track record of getting things done on behalf of my constituents, on behalf of Californians. I also have a track record of leading and not being on the sidelines in the fight to protect our democracy, in the investigations of the former president. I led the first impeachment trial of Donald Trump to the first bipartisan vote to convict or remove a president in history. I served on the January 6th committee and exposed the acts of the insurrectionists and the former president's role. California is used to having senators who are in the middle of the fight, not on the sidelines. Because I have been, I think it's a big part of the reason why people like Speaker Pelosi have endorsed me, as well as more than 20 of my current California House colleagues, current and past colleagues. And at the end of the day, what Californians want are results, and I've shown I can get results.
Right after you announced that you were running, Katie Porter's press team sent out a statement saying that she is the only person in the race that hasn't taken money from big corporate PACs. What is your response to that?
We're not taking corporate contributions either. The first bill that I introduced, I'm very proud of my record on campaign finance. The very first bill on my very first day in Congress was a campaign finance reform called McCain-Feingold. I introduced the House version of that legislation to ban then soft money. The problem has only gotten worse since then. I've been carrying for the last decade the constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. So I don't think anyone has a stronger record than I do on championing campaign finance reform, and that is going to continue to be a priority.
I know Feinstein announced officially today that she is going to retire. Your announcement, though, came before that. What is your relationship like with her? I know I don't have to explain to you, you've been in politics for a while. It's not common practice to announce you're going to run before the longtime senator announces that.
I sat down with Senator Feinstein a couple months ago before I even began exploring a run for the Senate. She and I have worked together very closely for years. She was the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee when I was the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. We worked together to fight Russian interference in our election. We worked together on environmental measures, on gun safety bills, on establishing an early earthquake warning system. So we're very close, and I told her of my respect for her, my admiration, and indeed affection for her. But I was very interested in beginning to talk to people, and she was very gracious. She said at that time that she was determined to finish her term. There was a great deal more she wanted to do. Beyond that, she hadn't made a decision, but she was perfectly comfortable with my beginning to talk with people. I think she earned that respect, and I'm just so proud of the work that she's done, and I look forward to the next 2 years working with her, and I hope to carry on her legacy.
Has she said whether she's going to back you now that she's out?
She has not said. I would love to have her support, but I think right now we are focused on the legacy that she has and the continuing work she wants to do, and I'm just so grateful for everything she's done and what there is more to come.
All right, now that the announcement is official, can you tell us whether or not you knew it was coming today? Or coming in general?
Yeah, I suspected that it was going to come within the next few weeks or months, but I did not know before today that it was going to be today. And I think she wrestled with a decision. She loves the work, she's good at the work, and so I don't think it was an easy decision.
Talk to me. I know your record on former President Trump is very clear. He's announced he's running again in 2024. You're opposed to that, but what about someone like Nikki Haley, who announced also that she is going to officially run in 2024?
Well, I think it's going to be a crowded field, and that concerns me because Donald Trump did very well in a crowded field in 2016. He has quite a talent at picking apart his Republican primary opponents. I think he has really destroyed the Republican Party. He has taken it from being a party of a conservative ideology and turned it into kind of a cult of personality around him. Whether that remains the case, whether Nikki Haley can compete, or Mike Pence or Mike Pompeo or Ron DeSantis or any of these people, sadly all too many of them have become imitators of his ugly brand of divisive politics. I think all too often Nikki Haley went along with the actions of Donald Trump, was one of the enablers of Donald Trump, as other people who served in that administration were. And they may try to run away from that legacy, but I think it will be a stain that carries with them throughout the rest of their career.
Something that President Biden started off his State of the Union with was looking at Kevin McCarthy, saying, I hope I don't ruin your reputation, maybe I will, but I look forward to working with you. What is your relationship like with McCarthy, and do you see yourself working across the aisle with him to get what you want to get done before you potentially head off to the Senate?
I think I share the opinion of Kevin McCarthy that many Republicans have of Kevin McCarthy, which is that he doesn't stand for anything, that he has no core set of beliefs or guiding principles. And that makes it very hard to work with someone when you don't really know where they're coming from. All that being said, when Devin Nunes was the chair or ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, and we had profound differences over Donald Trump and his misconduct in Ukraine, with Ukraine, his misconduct with Russia, nonetheless, we got our annual intelligence bills done every year. We managed to get the work done. And I shared President Biden's view that where we can work together and get things done on behalf of the American people, on behalf of Californians, I stand ready to do it. A lot of the most important work that I've been able to do in Congress has been on a bipartisan basis. It's the only way certain things can get done, like the intelligence work that I've been doing. So it's vital to look for those areas of common ground.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that you did introduce legislation to suspend the gas tax, the federal gas tax, and I heard that you plan to reintroduce it again.
Yes.
In California, it's actually the Democrats who are the top Democrats against doing a suspension of the gas tax, and Republicans have been calling for it. Why do you think that is the right solution?
I think, the concern that many Democrats have about suspending the gas tax is that it funds a lot of infrastructure improvements, which makes it very important. The unique feature of my bill is that it would pay for the suspension of the gas tax by imposing a windfall profits tax on oil companies that are gouging. So it would be paid for. That means we could eliminate the tax or suspend it, but also continue with the infrastructure projects. It would also say to the gas companies whose profits are now 200, 300% of what they were in the past, we're not going to let you continue to gouge consumers who are having to choose between paying their gas bill or paying their rent or paying for food. So to me, it accomplishes both objectives, and I think it meets the concerns that Democrats may have had. It will put Republicans to the test, though, I have to say. How much do they really support reducing the gas tax? Or are they more beholden to the oil companies and unwilling to support a windfall profits tax on them?
A little bit of a change of topics. A lot of people have been paying attention to the balloons that have been flying over the country. As the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, what can you tell us about that as the public awaits more information?
The first balloon that was shot down was clearly a Chinese surveillance balloon. There are every indication that we are being able to, according to public reports, which are all I can really speak to, recover some of the remnants of that Chinese surveillance balloon. The Chinese explanation that it is a weather balloon is completely false. The advantage that those balloons have over, for example, a Chinese satellite that might rotate over the United States is their lower altitude. They have more persistence, meaning they can hover over a target, which means that they can gather certain things that a satellite might not. They may also be able to gather electronic communications that I think is to be determined. So we should be concerned about it. It's a violation of our sovereignty. It's also a violation of our privacy. I think the administration was right to shoot it down, and I think they were right to shoot it down when it would not land potentially on top of someone and cause great harm or injury or death. The other unidentified as yet objects may be other kinds of balloons, or they may be other kinds of aerial phenomenon. And I wait to see what more we can learn. I was in a briefing today on it, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions. Last year, as part of that intelligence authorization legislation I mentioned, we urged the formation of a unit within the Defense Department to gather more data on a lot of these unidentified aerial phenomenon, reduce the stigma of reporting them, so that we can understand what's in our airspace, what's in the airspace in other parts of the world. Is it a threat? Is it something that's quite explainable if we know what it is? Or is it something else? And I'm glad to see the White House is now establishing its own task force to do the same thing.
With the limited information that the public has been given, it appears that these are more frequent, especially the last few that we've seen. Why do you think it's happening now?
Well, I think we still don't know whether this is a case of these being more frequent or whether we just weren't detecting them in the past. And so it only appears they were more frequent. The fact that we don't know, though, is a problem. We really do need to know what's in our airspace, both because it could interfere with aircraft and create a danger, depending on the altitude, but also because if it's a foreign nation spying on us, we need to know that too and put a stop to it. So clearly, we're going to have to do a better job in understanding what's flying over the United States. But I think we will know a lot more when we identify those other three objects.